Okay, thank you all for joining today's Tech and Career Talk with BDPA. I'm Devin Jenkins, our BDPA Tech and Career Talk leader, Senior Technical Product Manager at GE Healthcare in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Glad to be here today. Excited to hear from Jakym, who has been doing some phenomenal work with his organization, STEM is the New Black, in addition to his professional career. So I'll let him get into some of that a little bit later. But for those who may not be familiar, BDPA was founded in 1975 as an organization that teaches young people computer programming skills, but also serves as a forum for technology professionals to connect and continue to develop in their professional careers. So over 40 years of a legacy there. The work continues today, and we're glad to have you here. The Tech and Career Talks we've been doing for about 2 years now, and we bring in various speakers on a bi-monthly basis to talk about a range of topics. This year we've had Mark Martin in the UK speaking on Black innovation. We've had Chris from Alabama speaking on brain-machine interaction. We talked about diversity and inclusion, tech and COVID-19. We had a range of topics this year. So excited today to hear from Jakym about some ways we can think differently about how we build and engage potential talent in the STEM pipeline. So a brief bio for Jakym. He's a native of Atlanta, Georgia. He received a dual degree from Fort Valley State University and the University of Arkansas in chemistry and chemical engineering, and he completed that program in 2015. He started his professional career with DuPont in Detroit, where he was a technical sales consultant with the DuPont Commercial Development Program, which was a rotational program for recent engineering graduates. The opportunity to work there presented itself when he was at the 2015 NSBE National Convention, a career fair in California, and he networked and was able to land that opportunity. Now he is with Kryberg TPE as an automotive application engineer, where he's been since 2018. We're still continuing to work in the materials industry. His parents, Bernell and Kim Bowder, are his biggest influence because they were able to successfully instill the importance of education in him despite not having college degrees. He says while it can be very difficult for parents with working class backgrounds to paint a vivid picture of the opportunities made available through education, his parents were able to always make that a priority to take advantage of any chance to highlight the benefits of education for him. So he's been active with NSBE. He's also a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And as you will learn today, he has founded this great organization, STEM is the New Black, promoting STEM careers among young people in underrepresented communities across the country. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Jakym. And the show is yours. Are you able to unmute? If not, let me unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Devin, for the great introduction. I definitely appreciate it. And thanks for everyone joining on the line. Definitely appreciate your time this morning. So as Devin had the chance to mention, I am Jakym Battle, founder of STEM is the New Black, and I definitely appreciate you taking some time to go a little bit in depth in terms of just the bio in general, because it does speak to a good amount of just the overall inspiration behind STEM is the New Black. So as we go through the presentation prepared for this morning, I will highlight a few of those things, but not to be redundant, just to kind of speak to, like I said, how they play into the whole story of my journey through just education altogether and my career thus far. And once again, that inspiration behind STEM is the New Black and just that overall importance of being able to kind of reach back and see the importance of developing that STEM talent pipeline. All right, here we go. So what we do have prepared, like I said, will be a brief bio, just highlighting some of those things that we had the chance to mention. The overall purpose of the organization and just some of its roots and where we've had the chance to get to thus far. Um, some of the pipeline challenges that we consistently see, not just with my own personal experience or even with STEM and Black, but some of the things that are more consistent across the board as we continue to partner and work with other STEM-based organizations, different institutions from a K through 12 or collegiate or even corporate standpoint, and some of the challenges that, like I said, remain consistent there. We'll also discuss some of the solutions that we began working on developing in the form of programs and then just partnerships with different groups, and some of those consistent themes that we do tend to see be some of the highlights that really gets a good amount of traction across the board, and we'll break that down by different focus groups, that being at the high school, middle school, elementary school level, and then from there to transition into some of the opportunities that are available, not just for students, but also for early and mid-career professionals as well. One of the most common things that we see as it pertains to just the STEM pipeline is a number of times, you'll hit your career stride and then, develop an interest in STEM as an adult. So we definitely want to make sure that we highlight opportunities not just for K through 12 or collegiate, but for early and mid-career professionals as well. So as Devin had the chance to mention, once again, I am Jakym Battle, native of Atlanta, Georgia, graduate of Fort Valley State University and University of Arkansas. I did have the chance to participate in a dual degree engineering program upon graduation from high school. And one of the things that I just want to make sure to highlight here, one of the focal points around this was not only, the idea of matriculation through one yet two schools, but the importance of being able to develop a cohort of students that was built at Fort Valley State University and had the opportunity to transfer to a number of different partner institutions, University of Arkansas being the one that I chose. However, Georgia Tech, Penn State, UNLV, UT Austin, LSU, and a host of other institutions also being a part of that partnership. What I had the chance to learn in that is that these types of collaborative joint ventures between institutions is something that is fairly common, and we do see quite often from an HBCU perspective, and also at a number of the HSI or MSI institutions as well for the Hispanic serving institutions. So being able to get a grasp on how these types of partnerships work at the academic level, you also begin to see, a number of different partnerships from a corporate level as well. So as we have highlighted, definitely being a member of NESB also, I joined the National Society of Black Engineers back in high school from their pre-collegiate setup. And of course, the structure of NESB is very similar to BDPA. In addition, once again, in the name of networking, also being a member of Alpha Phi Alpha as well. So just like I said, being a very consistent theme of having the chance to work with many different cohorts and communities of people throughout this overall journey. And last but not least, of course, being founder of STEM is the New Black, which is an organization that from its roots is just dedicated towards getting more minorities exposed to the opportunities and careers within that STEM space. So from there, we'll just kind of transition into that purpose of the overall organization itself. So as I mentioned, STEM is the New Black is an organization that is dedicated to just the idea.
If you can, I think we lost you for a second there. see your screen moving, but we don't hear you. There
Can
you go.
can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Definitely sounds like I got kicked off the line, so as long as everyone can hear me okay, I'll go ahead and continue. Excuse me. So like I was saying, STEM is the New Black is definitely an organization dedicated towards reshaping just the culture of STEM with both intelligence and creativity. So as we did have the chance to mention a little earlier, definitely a minority-based, a minority-serving organization, just highlighting the fact that a number of times when we think about these different opportunities, it's something that doesn't necessarily get the exposure that it deserves in our respective communities. So as we begin to talk about just some of the challenges, definitely having some, there we go. Just as we talk about developing this pipeline, we definitely realize that there are some challenges associated with that as well. And so one of the main things from a STEM is the New Black perspective is not only being able to have a cohort of just overall professionals that come up and, throughout college, graduate, and go into STEM careers, but also developing that community around those that are a little bit more active in the community and those who are tied right in and have that pipeline very organically. So what we did and what we continue to do is have the chance to connect with a number of educators in a number of different respective communities and highlight just some of what those challenges can be. That's something that classroom educators and teachers specifically are a little bit more privy to, when you're right at the interface of the students. So a number of the things that are consistently highlighted as the challenges and the roadblocks that students face in terms of their inspiration into STEM is that lack of representation. Even for the students, that may realize those opportunities are available. A lot of times they feel like they're just not for them, for whatever particular reason. It's like, yeah, I know I can go into these different careers, but that's not something that, is for somebody like me. In other instances, it is just simply that exposure, having little to no idea that you can do anything in STEM outside of, being a doctor or a scientist. So another common theme there is just being able to put a multitude of opportunities in front of students. And once again, having those partnerships directly, with educators allows you to really put real life experience in front of a number of students that otherwise, as a STEM professional, you may or may not have access to. In addition to that, another theme being that encouragement and mentorship. Being able to connect directly with the educational professionals, you have the chance to be introduced directly to whether that be an entire school of students or just a simple classroom or a handful of students. They have the chance to see that right in front of them. So not only that exposure, but that encouragement to go into something like that and that mentorship to be able to have, whatever questions and whatever inquiries and curiosities they have around the careers they may be exposed to, continuing to fill that void and fill them up with knowledge. And lastly, that reinforcement. So even with all of these things, somebody being exposed and seeing that representation, being able to have some form of constant interaction over the development of these partnerships definitely is what can help drive the difference in, encouraging these students and keeping them within that pipeline. So a number of the different programs that we've had the chance to work on in the past range, once again, like I said, just from a K through 12 perspective, all the way to the collegiate in some different arenas. But some of the more common ones being test prep workshops. In many instances, in my own experience included, a lot of times you have the chance to see, you go to class and go home from a K through 12 perspective, but very rarely is there any amount of information that's put in front of you
just in terms of how to best position yourself to go to college, you know, and what that looks like from a post-secondary standpoint. Even a lot of times when it's preached that it is very important to go to college, the very idea of how, you know, to get into a program that you'd like to get into, or even just a university that you'd like to get into, that's a huge missing step. So we take the time to highlight some of these things. So not just the core competencies around doing well on an ACT or an SAT test, but also just being able to understand everything in between in that intermediate step of graduating from high school and, you know, putting yourself in the best position to move forward into college, because, of course, it is a very transitional period. One of the more common examples is being able to have the chance to have classroom visits or general assemblies, just depending, of course, on the number of students and the time allotted for these different engagements. The larger the group, of course, the more students you have the chance to impact on an overall level. However, a number of times we do have the chance to see different classroom visits and things of that nature to get more specific core groups that may be focused specifically on, you know, 8th grade mathematics or something of that nature. And then some of the more long-standing interactions include these different mentorship programs that a lot of times are able to be developed from a 3-tier standpoint, in which you have the partnership between the organization itself, STEM is the New Black, a university, in which a number of times we were able to have mentors. In the past, we've been able to use some of the different members of NSBE at different institutions, and also that partnering K through 12 school, whether it be a high school or most commonly middle school, where we have a chance, like I said, develop that 3-tier mentor program where you can set those goals and get a symbiotic relationship going between the organizations to, of course, create the overall pipeline. So in a last added aspect of that, in some instances it's a 3-tiered setup, and in others there's a 4th element to it where we have had the chance in the past to have corporate sponsorship, which does include that additional corporate piece, as I mentioned, having the chance to see mentorship at each and every level. So the corporate individuals mentoring the collegiate students, and then, of course, the collegiate students being able to pass that on to those high school and middle school students as well. So in a number of these different programs, of course, the overall interaction between the students is a very integral part of that. And a number of the core competencies are focused around the academics themselves. Of course, increasing students' mathematical competencies and just overall grades in academics in general. However, once again, in addition to the very common tutoring aspect of it, another of one of the pieces that we like to add in is being able to kind of add some value from once again, a very transitional standpoint. So these are some of the talks that we've had the chance to be able to line out in the past, and they range in terms of just a number of different topics. So one of the most common ones being why college is important. You know, when you have the chance to speak specifically with high school students, you know, of course, you have some that are dead set on going to college and have been, you know, for as long as they can remember. However, in some instances, you have the students that may be on the fence about it, and, you know, it may be a good fit for them, and they're just not exactly sure, you know, how they'll get that done or things of that nature. So being able to have these conversations at a fairly early standpoint, from the target area being 8th and 9th grade, being able to have that open dialogue for students on really what all it is you have the chance to learn in college. So not just the academic piece, but the networking piece and a number of other topics within that. A very relevant one, in addition to that, of course, being Black in America. why education is so important for us now more than it has ever been in the past. Another one that tends to resonate really well, once again, with middle and high school students, being the path less traveled. A lot of times it's very common, for students to want to have some type of desire for the careers and just the opportunities that are right in front of them. In many instances, a lot of times that's in the entertainment world. So being able to not only just expose them to, other dynamics and other careers and opportunities, but even within the world, that they already have a fascination with, just understanding, what types of STEM-related opportunities may be available even within the entertainment world, which is much less common knowledge, of course. Another being the idea of just once again that fundamental theme of STEM is the new black, being able to reshape the culture. And this is a discussion that we typically have on cultural responsibility. So a huge piece of that is just understanding exactly what that means, not to just be successful, for yourself or for your family, but being able to also not just come up through this pipeline, but continue to, let that be a very reciprocal thing. And regardless of where it is that you go in life, understanding exactly what that value looks like and that responsibility of paying it forward, for the people that helped you along the way. Another talk that we have, no substitute for hard work, which is just a breakdown, once again, that core group being middle and high school students, giving them 10 core tips that will help you succeed. For the most part, a lot of it's geared around the collegiate atmosphere and corporate atmosphere, but understanding that these are skills that are transferable whether you're in that space or not. And lastly, not your average statistic. So understanding how creativity can make a huge impact in this STEM world, and this kind of ties back into that path less traveled. So when we live in a world now where there is a number of different opportunities that can be lined out for, students from a collegiate perspective or from a pipeline perspective. We also live in a world where, a lot of times people can see opportunity or see spaces for opportunity and create it themselves. So not getting you so locked into this idea of a pipeline, but being able to identify what opportunity may look like for you. So like I said, that kind of ties back into the path less traveled, but once again, a very, very impactful discussion. So just to kind of take a deeper look at some of the different focus groups that we've had in the past, and just some of the general highlights on what we aim to do for the different said groups. Excuse me. So at the high school level, we noticed that one of the main things that we want to make sure to do is engage those students to explore these different interests within STEM. A lot of times once you've made it to the high school level, those core competencies are definitely there. And that's just a foundation that has to be built up on, and continuing to feed that interest that may be existing already. Also being able to fully understand that this isn't a one-shot method that may work across the board for high school, middle school, and elementary school, which is why we do have the different breakdown and the different focus groups all together. So secondly, it is extremely important at this stage to provide that mentorship. And in many instances, students are already, they have an idea of the path that they want to go down. And back to that pipeline challenge slide, this is where that reinforcement and that encouragement is very dire. Once you have that curiosity, it's important to have that be met and continue to be fed. So lastly, as students begin to prepare for that next step, whether that's, going into college or going directly into a career, or, more of a trade, being able to create that checklist to make sure, whatever those necessary steps would be before you arrive at the next step, that you're already, beginning to kind of mark off some of those boxes and have the resources that you need to do so. Another thing that we want to make sure to highlight is the fact that, as I was mentioning with the path less traveled and not your average statistic, a number of the things that we see in today's world don't really reflect that of, some of the previous generations. And students have, a number of different things that continue to pique their interest. One of the most common examples being social media. And so many times there's very little data or information that you can provide oftentimes on what careers in these different spaces look like. And it's very important that we, are able to take the time out and look and say, hey, this isn't something that's just consuming every last teenager on the planet's time. It's something that they can definitely do from a very productive standpoint. And a lot of times refocusing their attention allows them the chance to look at this completely differently. So one of the things that we'd like to make sure that we highlight is that social media isn't just a bunch of, likes and follows and views and things of that nature, but it's a great deal of opportunity as well, specifically in the STEM space. And just highlighting the fact that, social media marketing and social media platforms all together are, just a breeding ground for careers and opportunities. As we'll see listed here, just within Facebook, Twitter, and Google, we have 52,000, 4,600, and 114,000 jobs, respectively. And specifically at Instagram, they have 5,500 of those 52,000 Facebook jobs dedicated solely to that platform. So a lot of times it's easily viewed as a very negative thing and something that consumes a lot of people's time. But like I said, in many different instances, allowing us to kind of refocus that energy and allow students to understand that this is something that is for sure a very useful and impactful platform and a powerful platform, but we can take a look at it from a completely different perspective. So using these metrics to kind of highlight that is something that usually works fairly well for students in that space that do have a very strong liking to just the entire idea of social media. One of the many things that students tend to like just as much as social media, of course, is entertainment. And another example of that, a common example of that, is professional sports. So one of the most common examples that we like to use is highlighting the fact that there are many careers obviously available within the professional sports arena outside of just, the athletes that may be on the court or on the field. So one of the most common ones that we take a look at is that of a sports statistician. So a number of times, we'll run into students, and like we say with those pipeline challenges around just that overall exposure and engagement, that will gladly tell you, I'm not a fan of math. I don't like math. I don't like science. I don't like anything STEM. But at the same time can give you, the rundown of their favorite athletes' stats over the past year, and not seeing the disconnect at all, just in the fact that there are some very core competencies around that in terms of just basic mathematics, statistics, data analytics, and data modeling as well. So once again, very similar to social media and social media marketing, just being able to repurpose this interest and highlight the fact that, these are some skills that have a good amount of value to them and can be repurposed and put them in a very, very successful space as it pertains to that pipeline and understanding what those careers look like. Like I said, when just looking at it from a career standpoint or a compensation standpoint, one of the things, of course, that a lot of times gets kids going, especially from a high school perspective, is that around, just what that earning potential looks like. So that's definitely something that we typically don't shy away from. So as we kind of transition to the middle school perspective, just some of the instances that we worked with in the past, it is a little different, a little less concrete of the examples and the engagement, because a lot of times you haven't quite figured it out yet. So just highlighting some of the different real world examples of STEM in everyday life. In addition to that, identifying strengths and interest is just within general math and science, allowing them the space to continue to grow and just learn about different opportunities. Lastly, introducing STEM careers to help correlate that, that general interest in math and science with what those opportunities may look like down the line. So taking that from a more general perspective, and of course, as that interest continues to grow, guiding them in the right direction, saying, hey, if you really like social media, here are some careers you may be interested in. If you really like sports, if you really like entertainment, this is some opportunities that you may need to know about. So, like I said, continuing to just kind of encourage that interest across the board, and as they continue to grow older, allowing just that mentorship to kind of guide that space and make sure that they understand, just those opportunities that are available. And lastly, some of the different elementary school groups that we've had the chance to work with, the concepts are much more elementary, for lack of better words. But one of those main things being to introduce interactive STEM concepts and principles. Of course, this is much less data modeling and data analytics, and just more of an introductory perspective, making sure that interest is there, that engagement is there, and if that is something that students have a natural interest in, just making sure, once again, to continue to feed that and encourage that. Not only that, but one of the main things that you notice about working with younger groups is that goes back to that first bullet point that we saw around pipeline challenges, which is that of representation. Even if you don't understand all of the nuance it may take to go into the idea of college at such a young age, or even the career space, one thing that is very easy to see is, all of the images I've ever seen of anybody in this career do not look like me. So it's very easy to draw that conclusion at such a young age that that's not something I should have any interest in, because I've never seen that. So these are, as we look at things from an adult perspective, these are things that very frequently go over our heads, of course, but is something that is very prevalent to very young minds. And of course, in many instances, they're not too shy to mention that out loud. So definitely making sure that not only are we looking at it from a very technical perspective, as we talk about like high school, but even from a elementary level, understanding what's important to students at that age as well. So we've had the chance to cover a good amount of what that pipeline development looks like. I didn't want to go into too much detail and just kind of highlight what those challenges have looked like in the past, and just some of the general solutions that we've looked at in order to combat those. I definitely want to make sure to take some time to highlight those focus groups of early and mid-career professionals as well. One thing I would say that are one of the more common arenas that a number of professionals are driven to post-graduation is that within IT, number one. There are a number of IT certifications out there, and the graphic on the right just highlights some of those different opportunities in a little bit more detail. On the left, we have just listed, your CompTIAs, the CCNA, AWS, Python, Azure, Microsoft, and Google. And then, of course, just the corresponding opportunities within that on the right-hand side as well. One thing that we definitely like to make sure to highlight in terms of this information is the fact that a number of these spaces definitely allow for entry-level certifications, and sometimes, in many instances, without having any form of a technical background or, a technical degree. This is a transition that a number of people are able to make in the event that you do have interest in, these different spaces, and can tend to work out fairly well. Another one that is a pretty prominent example is that within operations also. Many institutions have some operations management programs that are available for folks that are interested in those career transitions. So whether that's from an IT standpoint, or an actual operation standpoint, just making sure we continue to share the information that there is a good amount of opportunity for folks that are interested in kind of switching things up. And of course, as it corresponds, these opportunities within STEM usually have a wealth of opportunity on the other side as well. So this is just like I said, a sneak peek at what it is that we aim to do and some of the things that we have done so far, just partnering with different organizations from a K through 12 standpoint, from a collegiate standpoint, and from a career professional standpoint also. So I'll go ahead and conclude from here. And if there are any questions or comments, for discussion, I'd definitely like to open up the floor for that.
Thank you, Jakym. At this time, I will unmute the lines in case you have questions, and you can also leverage the chat to drop your questions as well. Yeah, I've unmuted the lines. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. Okay. Are there any questions or comments for Jakym at this time?
Hi, good morning. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Jakym, I absolutely want to congratulate you for everything you're doing. My name is Matthew Lampkin, and I'm in Hartford, Connecticut, and I think some of the BDPA members and others who are on this call have definitely at some point, done some work with the youth, so we definitely applaud you on that. I do a lot of athletic coaching and stuff as well, in addition to working in IT. And one of the things that I had a question on for you with the high school kids, what are some of their main interests that you're seeing as far as STEM interests, in particular with IT? What are some of the things that they're really interested in and they're not really interested in?
Thanks for the feedback. As far as that high school group that you mentioned, as it pertains to IT, what I've seen most commonly, and honestly just across the board from high school and up, even just into full-fledged adults, just not being completely aware of all of the opportunities that are available. Which can for sure be a challenge, because at the high school level, especially if if you're in athletics, a lot of times that's something that you're really locked in on. So being able to just be aware of the number of opportunities that exist outside of athletics can be a challenge within itself, but also understanding just that amount of opportunity. Like, for instance, if we go back here, this is something, these are a number of certifications that are yielding some pretty decent salaries with or without degree, So this is something that a lot of times students aren't necessarily made aware of, especially if you're in that athletic space, because you're locked into something so far away from, just STEM altogether. So going back to the slide that we looked at in terms of the statistician, this is usually a good segue, because a lot of times if you're going from, saying you're on the football team or on the basketball team, and somebody sits you down and say, hey, look at this career in STEM, a lot of times you're locked in at something so far away from that. But if you say this career in STEM could get you, to a space that's still, heavily involved in what it is that you love, then that's when you can get the ball rolling a little bit easier, so to speak, where they say, okay, well, you're right. I love sports. I love sports more than anything in the world, and in the event that this is the direction that I want to go in, I would love to hear about other opportunities in sports that don't necessarily involve always being on the field or always being on the court. But at the same time, you're not compromising that overall, drive to be interested in sports. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely does. And I would tend to agree with you as well. It just seems like a lot of the youth, they're just not aware of the opportunities. And I think you really hit it on the head when you stated that if kids don't see people that look like you and I, that's where their interest just goes away. They look at those industries where there is a representation that they're familiar with. And in a lot of cases, that's what they steer towards. So I think it's really cool that you are trying to catch them at an early age and really shape their mindset, by presenting yourself and your colleagues out to them. So definitely, kudos to you and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I definitely appreciate it. So, and just to kind of piggyback off of that as well, like you mentioned, being an athletic coach, you're working directly with, athletes, of course. So this is an example that would more than likely resonate, just that idea of wanting to be, like we said, if you're not on the court or on the field, you can still highlight, just these opportunities and put it in terms that, everybody can understand. Everybody wants to go off, graduate and be successful in terms of whatever that looks like for you, But something even more, universal than that is that previous example when it comes to social media. There's very few instances on this planet at this point that don't involve, some form of social media. So this tends to be, a good example as well. You can kind of break these things down and put it in terms that not only people can understand, but something that also piques their interest. Because what we see a lot of times, especially as it pertains to middle school students, is it's not that they're not good at math and science at all. A good number of students transitioning from elementary to middle school have the proficiency. It's just if you don't have that interest to continue to, enrich these skills that you already have, it will taper off. Whereas going back to that sports example, a lot of times students aren't halfway interested in sports. That's their life. So that's something that you need very little encouragement to do. So being able to kind of, mimic that and pique somebody's interest in something they're already engaged in allows that to go that much farther in terms of these discussions, especially, over the course of such a short period of time. When you come in and you have an hour or 2 hours to speak to students, it can be a struggle to develop, whatever said relationship. So you have to come in and from the jump find something that resonates. And social media and athletics are usually two fairly common examples that gets the ball rolling from the jump.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, you're doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, great. Life is good. I wonder if you can go to that last slide about the career opportunity. And I'm saying this from a standpoint of if I had to do it all over again, and advising young people that are coming into the IT side to add the knowledge of Linux. Linux operating system will give you a foundation upon which to go into server administration. It's like 80% of all the servers in the data centers throughout the country or throughout the world, actually they're running on Linux. So Linux will also give you a good foundation to become a server administrator, whether no matter what you decide to do, those are good foundational areas that would
You're going out again. I can't hear you that well.
Yeah, and the last area I would like to say is I would consider being DevOps engineers. that's the foundation of all the cloud technologies. I know you have Python, AWS, Microsoft, and Azure and Google. Their cloud technologies are based on what the DevOps engineers are doing. So if you get the DevOps engineering track, you can go off into any of the other clouds and get over it. You understand what I'm saying? So those are just my suggestions to try to notify young people going their route, get those foundations with Linux. Okay, thank you.
Okay. No, like I said, you were going in and out for quite a bit, but if I'm not mistaken, I definitely heard the bulk of what you were saying, just around including Linux as well, with it being a huge foundational piece of that.
Yeah, that's correct, and that allows you to go into server administration and also become a DevOps engineer, which is both of them are the foundations of cloud engineering, which is cloud technologies, which is really the future. It's the now, but it's also the future.
Right. No, definitely agree.
Good luck in what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hey, Jakym, you have a question in the chat from Richard Miner, and he was asking for the mid-level career person in IT. How does your organization help them, or what does STEM as New Black have to offer those mid-career IT professionals?
So in terms of that, we partner directly with another organization called Kenyatta Computing Services, and in addition to having a little bit more detail around not just this data here in terms of all of the different certifications, definitely have some resources available as well there. They have a much smaller cohort that's dedicated directly to that IT space, and specifically around the IT certifications, in just that process of assisting people get prepared and even finding opportunities on the other side of it as well. So that's the bulk of where our focus is, being directly involved with that organization. So, and I'm not sure if you have a listserv or anything, Devin, but definitely would like to make sure the information, my contact info is distributed. If there are any follow-up questions, I would love to make any introductions. If you find that necessary, like we said, from an early mid-career standpoint. That's something that they do pretty frequently.
And before we end, I would ask you to drop your contact info in the chat for those who are in here, and then I can also work with our marketing director to make sure that's shared out when we send out the recording and all that information.
Okay. Nope, not a problem.
Right. Are there any other questions or comments out there for Jakym? We have about 5 minutes left. Going once, going twice. All right, and just so you know, I think my 5-month-old over here saying that these are the first words, so you're catching us at the moment right now. So you're in the background. I'm kind of happy right now, but nonetheless, Jakym, thank you for sharing with us today. Really appreciate it. We've had a number of conversations around the work you're doing with STEM as the New Black and your creative approach to engaging young people. So thank you for that. Sam Nixon, as he just asked, how do we find the slides from Jakym? I'll work on getting those shared out with the group as well. We will have the recording available on our website per usual pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that also. Jakym, any last words from you? before we close?
Like I said, opening up, I definitely thank you, Devin, thank BDPA, and every individual for joining this morning. Always glad to share this information on what STEM is New Black is doing. And if you do, I know a couple folks mentioned, some similar initiatives and just similar interests. We will get that contact information out. So if you have any follow-up questions now or a year from now, this is not a short-term goal. So please feel free to contact me whenever, and I'll be glad to help, and assist with whatever it is that I can do.
Thank you, Jakym. Jakym, please drop your email, your contact information in the chat before I close out the call.
Okay.
Last thing, Terry, I see you're out there. At least it looks like you're out there. You have any closing comments for us before we wrap up today? Let me just make sure. Okay. Don't see Terry coming off of mute, so I will assume Terry doesn't have much to say, but glad our BDPA president could join us today. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Terry. Okay. I'll work on making sure Jakym's contact information is shared out. But thank you all for joining. Have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll be back in a few weeks. Thank you.